So Jim's here. He's got the gas tank off the world's ugliest shovelhead. And these are a set of 1959, 1960 Panhead tanks. And this one's got a leak on it, so I'm going to repair it for him. Where's that leak at, Jim?
Right here, right in through this seam right there.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pressure test it and by submerging it in water, pump it up with air and submerge it in water. And it'll start to bubble where the leak is, and that's where we're going to weld it. That right there looks to me like the culprit spot. I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie. So when I pump it up, see if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably where the fuel is leaking from. Before I weld this tank, I want to make sure any fuel fumes that are inside of it are gone. So I do what I call burping it, where I put a flame right in the big hole of the tank, and if there's anything in it that's going to combust, it'll come out that hole. So I'm going to use a small butane lighter and see if that's enough to fire off anything that might be in there. Now you can see that fuel in that tank. I need all those fumes to burn off before I go and try and weld this thing. Otherwise, it's going to give me a nice explosion with that sudden addition of heat. But there's fuel in there somewhere. Here's my air pressure regulator off my air line from my air compressor. I got a high pressure line running into the cross feed fitting on the tank. I got the vent fitting on the tank plugged. And I'm not going to use a cap because I'm gonna carburate the pressure in the tank with the palm of my hand as I submerge it. You'll see right away as I kind of put my hand over the cap and remove it, you'll be able to see and hear the pressure build and release as I do that. Now I've got pressure going into the tank right now. Watch this. You can probably hear that pressure release. It builds and it releases. All right, so I got air going into the tank right now. Obviously, the cap is off of it, so it's not building pressure. It's just coming out through the cap. But I'm going to go ahead and start to submerge the tank. And wherever our leak is, you should see bubbles as soon as I start to cap it. Yep. And I can see bubbles already. So you can see those bubbles coming up there. And it is exactly where I marked it with the Sharpie. There's my Sharpie mark where that leak is. Get some heavy grit emery cloth here. I'm just going to remove the paint, JB Weld, and whatever else might be on this 65-year-old tank so that I can get a good clean weld. What wears this tank through here like this, I don't know if you can see, but it's worn through, is this detent is for the seat spring post. So the seat sits on a pogo stick. So the seat bar pivots up and down like this, and when that bushing in that front of that seat bar gets wore out, this bar can go side to side. It was probably rubbing the tank and rubbed through that weld somewhere over the years. And now it's got to the point where it's leaking. All right, so I'm gonna do a little short TIG weld in here. This is a really small leak, it's very minor. So, but I'm probably gonna wind up doing about a 1/4 inch long TIG weld. This tank may pop off a little bit more fuel. If so, you'll see it burp out of the cap there. But as you saw earlier, I got most of it out straight at me. So there can't be a lot left in there, but let's have some fun. As I first hit this seam with the torch, the heat just opened up. You can see how thin that metal is in that one spot there. Just split that seam wide open. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up real good and come back in and fill that with some rod and make sure that this doesn't become a bigger problem. Yeah, I can see. Here's my pressure test after the weld. You can see I'm holding on for a good long time there before I release. I'm not getting any bubbles. So I'm probably building up, 3, 4 PSI, which is plenty. 10 PSI will blow this tank apart. So my weld did its trick. All right, so the weld repair on the world's ugliest shovelhead 1959-1960 Panhead gas tank is done. But these tanks are kind of rusty inside. I'm gonna let you take a look in there. Jim's had a lot of problems with his fuel filter filling up with rust and with his fuel lines clogging. So I'm going to show you guys an old trick of how to loosen up some of the rust that may be inside this tank to break it up now and get it out now so that when he puts it back on the bike and puts fuel in it, he doesn't continue to have the same problems. So Jim's going to use this motorcycle chain and put it inside the tank. Okay, then he's gonna cap it. And he's gonna shake it like it owes him money. All that crap that was in there was somehow going to try and make it through his fuel line into his carburetor float bowl at some point. So good thing we got that out of there. I'm expecting a few kicks. I'm going to pull the choke and Richmond up on the S&S. Turn the key on.